Matt Schneidman Show, Monday, August 26th, live from Green Bay. And before a cut was even made, all of our 53-man roster projections are wrong.
Yep.
As always. I knew I wasn't going to get it completely right, but I didn't think I was going to start 0 for 1. The Packers trade a 2025 7th-round pick to the Tennessee Titans for quarterback Malik Willis, who some thought was going to be a first-round pick in 2022. Wasn't, fell to the 3rd round. Hasn't panned out to be anything in the 2 seasons since. I think from what I read after the trade happened, and it happened while I was in the middle of a Planet Fitness workout, so I didn't really even get my full workout in because I was typing up some stuff for our news team. He was going to be the 3rd stringer behind Will Levis and Mason Rudolph. So it looks like Malik Willis is going to be the Packers' new backup. Now, there's a lot of moving parts here, and let me explain why. I think we can comfortably say Malik Willis will be the backup for the majority of this season.
Mm-hmm.
Packers wouldn't trade a draft pick for a guy that's going to be a 3rd stringer.
Right.
But you have to consider, and I was talking about this with some of my other colleagues just via text tonight, is Malik Willis going to be ready to back up Jordan Love in less than 2 weeks come week 1? I mean, is he going to know the offense, know the guys? Like, I think there's a chance, I don't know this for certain, I think there's a chance that the Packers either keep Pratt or Sean Clifford on the 53, or if they're comfortable that either of them won't get claimed, bring one or both back on the practice squad. I still think one of them's coming back on the practice squad regardless. My guess would be Michael Pratt, just because it appears he has more upside and they can develop him there. While maybe they think they've, I don't want to say reached their ceiling with Sean Clifford because he's only in his 2nd year, but maybe they think there's more there with Pratt. Now, what do I think is going to happen? My best guess is they keep one of Pratt or Clifford on the practice squad. I'll say Pratt. And then if Malik Willis isn't ready to enter a game in Brazil on September 6th, less than 2 weeks from now, then they'll have Michael Pratt be one of the practice squad elevations for game day. And they'll carry 3 quarterbacks on the game day roster for week 1. And then Michael Pratt obviously goes right back down after that. That's assuming they think Michael Pratt will clear waivers, which I would assume he does.
I think both of them clear waivers. I think it was pretty clear to everyone that neither Clifford nor Pratt really separated themselves from each other and probably couldn't handle being the number 2 quarterback for the bulk of the season. The only wrinkle, and it's just maybe me overthinking this, which is entirely possible, but it's possible in my mind that they keep Clifford only for this reason, because he has been in the offense for an extra year. They keep him for a couple of extra weeks while Malik Willis really learns the offense. And then because I think that both Pratt and Clifford are going to be out there, maybe you pull the switcheroo on those two if they're both available, because I do think I agree with you. I think they think there's more upside with Pratt than Clifford, but Clifford does know the offense just a little bit more. He's not going to be the long-term solution at number 2. I think that we're all pretty clear about that. And like I said, maybe it's just me overthinking it, but I think they might try to perhaps think about that.
Malik Willis's career stats: 35 of 66, 350 yards, no touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 32 rushes, 144 yards, and a touchdown. There's a reason he just got traded for a 7th-round pick.
Yeah.
I mean, he was drafted in the 3rd round. The Titans clearly had plans for him to be more than just a 3rd-year backup. And if he's losing a backup battle to Mason Rudolph, something's clearly gone wrong in his development. So maybe there's something the Packers see that they can work with there. He's obviously really athletic. You know, he has more than half as many. I'm trying to figure out how I want to word this. 144 rushing yards, 350 passing yards. He's clearly a running guy.
Yeah.
Adds an intriguing element if LaFleur has to use him, can use him. But another intriguing element to this is Chad Brinker, who's now the Titans director of football operations, was a scout in the Packers department for the last 13 years. So there's some familiarity making this trade. And I'm sure Brian Gutekunst was on the phone with the guy who worked for him for the past decade. Didn't work for him for the past decade and a half, but worked alongside him for the last decade and a half. Interesting to say the least, but I do think the biggest question coming out of this is Willis going to be the backup in week 1? We'll see.
I think there's also, maybe because he does bring a different skill set, maybe there's a different way to deploy him in different offensive sets for LaFleur as the season goes on, as Willis begins to learn the offense. Maybe they could throw a couple of wrinkles in there as well. Not that I'm not saying that he's going to replace Jordan Love. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that perhaps there could be like a different formation. I don't know, in some way, shape, or form. I'm speculating. I didn't see this necessarily coming because the Packers generally haven't had a quarterback that has the same skill set that Malik Willis has. So that kind of intrigues me a little bit. But I also think that they felt like their hands were kind of tied with what they had because, again, neither one of them, speaking of Clifford and Pratt, really showed that they were, worthy of being, on an NFL roster. Now, granted, one of them is a rookie and one of them is just in his second season. And it's not like Sean Clifford got any time on the field last year anyway. But I just think they saw what they saw. We all saw what we saw. And, maybe you just bring in somebody who has a little bit more experience, maybe a little bit more upside, and eventually he can be your number 2. I kind of agree with you. I don't know if he's going to be the number 2 in week 1, just because that is such a position that you have to absorb so much in such a short amount of time. But yeah, I mean, also, I know the Packers wouldn't trade a draft pick for somebody who they're just going to bury at number 3. That having been said, the number 7, a 7th round draft choice for next year, I mean, the price was right. If they thought that there's something there with Malik Willis that they can bring him in, take a look, and, think that they can develop him a little bit, it's not like he's cost prohibitive by any stretch of the imagination. He's much more cost prohibitive for the Titans who, spent a 3rd round draft choice on him. Anytime you spend a 3rd round draft choice, there aren't that many quarterbacks that develop into something. Joe Montana, Russell Wilson, sure, Tom Brady famously in the 6th round, but most quarterbacks that you consider to be franchise quarterbacks are 1st round picks. 3rd round pick for a quarterback, you're just hoping to get something there more times than not, and oftentimes it's just a backup.
Yeah, and I think ultimately what this comes down to, as it does with most teams, is just got to knock on wood that Jordan Love doesn't get hurt.
Of course.
we're sitting, and we've talked about this before, we're sitting here in Green Bay and saying, oh, the Packers' backup quarterback situation is dire. Jordan Love can't get hurt. Well, every team doesn't want their starter to get hurt. Most teams are screwed if their starter gets hurt. So the Packers aren't going to fare well. And who knows? Can Malik Willis win them a game? Matt LaFleur was obviously non-committal on can Clifford or Pratt win you a game in the regular season. That's why he included in his answer, we'll look elsewhere and see what's out there for us, which is what he said for the kicker position. We'll get to that later. But Ken Willis, it's clear the Packers see something. Like I said, they wouldn't have traded a draft pick for him if they didn't think he was an upgrade over Clifford and Pratt. But this changes the 53 projection. I want to start there because cut down day tomorrow. By the time we talk to you tomorrow evening on this show, the Packers roster will be down to 53 guys. I wanted to go through each position group and kind of go through our projections, what we're thinking regarding the 53. So starting with quarterback, obviously, my revised projection would be Jordan Love and Malik Willis. And I'll say that they're confident that both Clifford and Pratt will clear waivers, and then they can have their pick of a guy who, listen, do they take both on the practice squad and say, all right, Clifford, you're a backup for week 1 because you know the offense better. Pratt, you have higher upside, so we're still going to keep you. Like, there are a lot of moving parts here. I don't know what the Packers exactly are going to do with the quarterback position, but maybe they can use 2 practice squad spots on a quarterback and then just release Sean Clifford after week 1 or week 2 because they think Willis and Pratt, the other 2 guys, have more upside, and Willis can be QB2 once he learns the offense.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear they think, I mean, I certainly think, and I've said this for a couple of weeks, Well, I think Michael Pratt has more upside. You can't just judge a quarterback by how strong his arm is, but he clearly has a stronger arm. I think he's got a pretty good presence back there for a rookie, for a seventh round pick. So I think they know what they've got with Sean Clifford, and he was a good college quarterback who was a serviceable backup last year. And I think that's about it. And I don't even know if he was a serviceable backup last year. He was just a backup last year. That's pretty much it.
Doug, have some respect for a guy that leads the NFL all time in completion percentage. He's 1 for 1 all time with 37 yards per completion.
Okay, that's good. Well, good for him. So when I said that he didn't see the field at all last year, I was way, way, way off. He was 1 for 1. Got out on the field. He took a knee or two. Threw a pass. Good for him.
Let's get to our first break. Afterward, we're breaking down running back, wide receiver, tight end, O-line, D-line, linebacker, secondary, kicker, punter, long snapper. We're getting to it all. It is the eve of roster cutdown day, and we got you covered right here on the Matt Schneidman Show on the Game. What goes great with an Iron Jock workout? Or watching your favorite sport, a drink tumbler. Now through September 2nd, when you buy just $50 or more, not only will Iron Jock take 25% off of your entire purchase, you'll also get their Iron Jock White Tumbler for free. Just use promo code 25Tumbler. Go to ironjock.com for details. That's ironjoc.com. Now, Doug, I just read this to you before we came on the air. We got a comment. I'm going to call him out. LaCroix Butler on Twitter.
Oh, he's always negative. Don't worry about him.
Oh, I'm not worried at all. I just didn't know if we were ignoring callers. He said, will you actually take calls? ? Season 2 has been a snooze.
Sure, when people call.
Yeah, we'll go back to sleep.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people like to text more than call nowadays. So that's something that's really changed in sports radio. I think it's just changed overall in radio over the last several years.
And that's fine.
We'll take calls. You also have to know when to call. We got one call with about 40 seconds left in the show on Friday. I can't do anything with that.
414-799-1973, the Nicolay Law talk and text line. You can talk or text.
The best time to call is during a break. Just saying. It's the best time to call. You can call anytime. If you call with 40 seconds left in the show, I can't do anything with that. So there you go.
There you go. Let's dive into our roster projections, or what we think is going to happen with the roster come tomorrow. A lot of teams are making early cuts, cutting 11, 12 guys. Packers, not yet. They cut Pat O'Donnell early last year. Don't think they did anyone else. This year, nothing. So Doug's on the phone. That might have actually worked. We'll start off with the running back position, since we touched on quarterback in the first segment. And the big question here is, how significant are the injuries to A.J. Dillon and Marshawn Lloyd? We have been kept in the dark regarding that from the team. A.J. Dillon has missed about a week with a stinger. Marshawn Lloyd has missed a couple weeks with a hamstring injury suffered in the first preseason game. I think A.J. Dillon suffered his stinger in practice before the Broncos game, maybe? Or in the first game? I don't entirely remember. But A.J. Dillon missed 3 weeks with a stinger last year. Marshawn Lloyd, haven't seen him play yet, so he needs these reps to get in the game. Like we've said before, this seems like a prime opportunity for the Packers to utilize the new pre-cut-down day IR designation on at least one of their running backs. Now, in my final roster projection, I kept both Dillon and Lloyd on the roster because we just don't know what's going on with their injuries. But it would not surprise me in the slightest if Emmanuel Wilson is on the 53 and one or both of Dillon and Lloyd begin the season on IR. Then that would be an issue, because then your third running back is probably Ellis Merriweather, and you all of a sudden go into Brazil with yikes running back depth.
Yeah. As far as the running back, it's just sometimes injuries happen, and that's what's going to ding your depth every single time. Ellis Merriweather, but
had a nice day Saturday against the Ravens.
Yeah. So did Emmanuel Wilson. So did a lot of guys. So did Aaron Mosby. He had a nice day. Is he going to make the roster?
No.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
well, I'm saying Ellis might, because
Christian Welch had a great preseason overall. He was a ball hawk the whole time. He going to make the roster?
Probably not.
I root for him. He's an Iola guy.
Their position groups haven't been decimated with injury.
True. I mean, it's funny. I was talking to Christian Welch in the locker room afterwards, and I asked him a leading question about what has it meant to him to wear a Packers uniform, and then he goes into this. Yeah, having grown up in central Wisconsin, I grew up in a little town in central Wisconsin called Iola. I'm just looking at him and go, yeah, I know. That's why I asked you the question. Yeah, he's a Wisconsin guy. You hope that you want the local kid from the small town to do well.
Well, Doug, we don't. Not all the players know that you're as witty and leading as people who listen to this show do. So forgive him for explaining to the viewers and the listeners that he's from Wisconsin.
I know. He's a good guy. I enjoyed talking to him.
Yeah,
really enjoyed talking to him. But he's like, listen, I've been a bubble guy my whole career, and he kind of has been.
Right.
So you wish him well. If he can make it he's still eligible for the practice squad, right? Was this his 5th year?
I think veterans are
4th year, 5th year?
Yeah, but I don't think there's a limit on how many years you're in the league for you to be eligible for the practice squad since they expanded the practice squad.
Okay. Then never mind.
But I think running back, and Mike Heller asked me earlier today what I'm watching closest tomorrow. I think running back. And not for necessarily who makes the team and who doesn't, but who gets placed on IR and who doesn't.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. That's going to be interesting. We did have one caller asking if Sean Clifford had any trade value, and no, none. 0.
No, he does not.
He does not.
So that's running back. My final guess, and this is just a shot in the dark, I'll say Lloyd to IR. But then again, Dylan missed 3 games with a sting. I don't know. I'm copping out of this one. Dylan missed 3 games last year. If he is going to miss 3 weeks with a stinger again, then you're going to maybe put him on IR because he might miss the first game if that's the case. But Lloyd, even if he were to come back this week, next week, is that going to be enough to have him be RB2, RB3 by week 1 with all the time he's missed this summer?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's also a question, we talked about guys getting through. If A.J. Dillon, I mean, I don't know what we don't know, and we're not going to know what the severity of the injury is, but, with the stinger, if it's bad enough, would they consider an injury settlement and, just kind of saying thanks for your time in Green Bay?
I guess that's possible too. That's why the running back position I said is the most intriguing tomorrow for me. Though there are several other intriguing battles like at wide receiver. Now we know the top 5. I've said all along Bo Melton's a lock. I don't think he played his way onto the roster with the touchdown catch he had against the Ravens. I think it really comes down to DuBose and Heath.
Mm-hmm.
I said last week, Samori Touré's time is probably up. I don't know if they feel like they've reached a ceiling with him and they'll just let him go instead of bringing him back on the practice squad. But I think that number 6 wide receiver spot, and I don't see them keeping 7. I guess I could see them keeping 5. I think it comes down to DuBose and Heath, and both have showed some really nice things this summer.
I think with Samori Toure, I don't know if they feel like they've reached their ceiling with him, or maybe other guys are just better. And maybe that's saying the same thing, just using different words, but I just think that there are other guys that have passed him. I don't think he's gotten worse. I just think that there are other guys that they've acquired over the last couple of years that have developed better and are just better players than Samori Toure. And listen, Samori Toure making the roster when he, was first drafted, that was kind of an upset in the first place, and he stuck around for a couple of years. So, I mean, good on him. I don't know what his NFL future is, though. There's probably a team somewhere out there that could use him. I think he's a smart player. But yeah, I just think there are better players, better wide receivers in that room.
We've talked about it a bunch on this show. To be that number 6 wide receiver, you got to do more than just catch. You got to block. You got to play special teams. That's why Malik Heath made the team last year, because he can block. Grant DuBose showed that he can block and play special teams this preseason. We already knew Malik Heath can do that. Then Malik Heath, after Grant DuBose started off the preseason hot, comes in against the Ravens, and he has his day pass catching, including a touchdown catch. So that's going to be close. I still have Grant DuBose on my final roster. It would be interesting to see if DuBose would have made the team last year, because he missed the first couple weeks of camp with, forget what injury he had back. I forget exactly what it was, but he started behind the 8 ball last year. So that, in part, is why Heath made the roster. Now they're on even footing, and I think it's relatively close. I'll go with DuBose, but I would not be surprised if it's Heath. Neither of them are going to get claimed.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about this all the time. The last guy claimed from the Packers was Taysom Hill. There are a million guys like this around the league, guys who flash in the preseason. So they'll keep one of them on the practice squad. But that 53-man check cashes a lot harder than the practice squad check, I'll tell you that.
Yes, it does.
So it matters to them for sure.
Even
if neither of them are going to be active on game day.
1,000% it matters. Anytime you go into like an MLB clubhouse and talk to the kid who just got called up, I mean, they make more in their first MLB check than they do the entire season down at
Oh, yeah.
AAA. And that's why I think the biggest reason that so many of them are so happy just to be there so they can pay their mortgage for another year. I mean, it's a big difference. It's a huge difference.
I've seen some roster projections with Tyler Davis off it. Now, would I be stunned if Tyler Davis doesn't make the team? No. I think Bill Huber had him starting the season on IR. Obviously, he tore his ACL in the preseason opener last year. Believe he's hurt again this year, and I don't think it's related to the knee. I'd have to look back what the injury is, but he did come back, play in a preseason game, has played in practice, and missed the last preseason game with an injury. But I think if he's healthy, he makes the team. He's been valuable to their special teams. I've said it before. Rich Bisaccia, when Tyler Davis went out with the torn ACL in the preseason opener last year, used the word devastating to describe that loss because of what he means to the special teams units. Musgrave and Kraft are obviously locks. And then Ben Sims has been a menace in the 2-minute drills this summer. I think he's another guy that can be that Y tight end. Like, I'm not saying he's Mercedes Lewis, but he can catch an occasional pass here and there down the seam, and he can block too. He's a massive body. So I think that position group is pretty cut and dry. Messiah Swinson and Joel Wilson are the two tight ends who aren't going to make it, but I would not be surprised if maybe Tyler Davis, like Bill suggested, does start on IR. That's the only question there for me. Other than that, Packer fans have to be excited about seeing Musgrave and Kraft on the field together because we didn't really get to see that last year.
Mm-hmm.
Musgrave was kind of the guy in the first half, and then Kraft came on after Musgrave went out with the injury. Now, knock on wood, they'll be on the field together and healthy for the first extended stretch of time, and I think the Packers are excited about what those two guys can do.
Yeah, I think they're in pretty good shape in the tight ends room. And listen, I don't know if Tyler Davis is going to make it or not. Like you said, he's valuable on special teams, but he has had a couple of injuries over the last couple of years. The knee injury certainly wiped out his entire 2023 season. You know, sometimes that affects guys and whether or not they're going to try to get them through, and put them on IR for another year. So I don't know what the future holds for Tyler Davis. I know that special teams, the Packers have made an investment in that, but I don't think that they're going to keep somebody just for that isn't a specialist. But we'll see. I don't know. I think he's certainly on the bubble, in my opinion. Has been for a while too. For that reason.
Offensive line's an interesting one because the biggest question coming out of camp was about the swing tackle position. I think obviously Rasheed Walker's a lock, Elton Jenkins a lock, Josh Myers a lock, Sean Ryan and Jordan Morgan locks, Zach Tom a lock, Jacob Monk a lock. That's 7. They're going to take 9 or 10 guys. So that leaves 2 or 3 spots for Royce Newman, who I would be surprised if he makes it, Andre Dillard, Kadeem Telfort, Caleb Jones. Who else am I missing? Travis Glover, the rookie 6th-round pick. Now, I think it'll be Dillard and Glover. I think Glover being a draft pick probably earns him some time.
Probably.
Dillard was injured, so he didn't play in the preseason finale. I'm pretty sure that's why he missed the preseason finale, not because his spot was safe. In the first 2 preseason games, according to PFF, Dillard had 29 pass blocking snaps and didn't allow a single pressure. I believe he was in the starting lineup with the starters when Zach Tom still wasn't playing in the first preseason game and then wasn't in the second preseason game. I believe he played only 7 snaps, but didn't start. Now, my initial read on that was, he's not even on the second string unit. He's probably cut. But then if you look at him just playing 7 snaps in a game where mostly backups play, it might be because he's safe too. So I would expect Dillard to make the team. One of Telfort or Glover, I think, makes it. Maybe they take both if they take 10. But if they only take one, I think Glover being a draft pick earns him some time. Neither guy is going to get claimed, so I don't think it really matters. But I think draft pick probably earns you some time just naturally, so I would go with Glover. But Telfort, he had been working with the ones for a little bit this summer. He can play left and right tackle. He's a massive, massive human being. That being said, I think Caleb Jones is on the outside. The one chance he really got with the ones that I remember this summer was on family night when Rashawn Gary made him look silly. And Rashawn Gary makes everyone look silly, so that's not like a terrible thing.
Right.
Then on the interior, I think Royce is gone. And then their two backup interior guys are either Morgan and Monk or Ryan and Monk. I think at this point, we're looking at Sean Ryan starting week 1 because Jordan Morgan's just missed so much 11-on-11 time, about 3 weeks now. And Matt LaFleur, even though he uses the word outstanding to describe everything, he did say Sean Ryan has been outstanding since taking over as that quote-unquote starting right guard, which, as we've said, appeared to be Jordan Morgan's spot to lose before he got hurt with that shoulder injury.
Yeah, but you know what? Credit Sean Ryan. I mean, this is somebody who doesn't want to be that swing, that inside guy that moves all over the line. Everybody who plays wants a starting role. They want to lock that thing down. And when you have the ability, even though it, was because of Jordan Morgan having the shoulder injury, credit Sean Ryan for stepping in there and showing that, he has what it takes to be a starting NFL right guard. And whether or not that's proven out over the course of the season, I suppose we're going to find out. But, everything that he did has put him in a position where, he's forcing his way on the field. That's what you want from these guys. And despite the fact that they drafted Jordan Morgan in the first round this year, they also drafted somebody who played nothing but left tackle last year and, feel like they have that he's got the positional versatility to move to the inside over on the right guard at the right guard position. I give Sean Ryan a ton of credit for, taking that, proverbial ball and running with it. Good for him.
Defensive line, switching over to the defensive side of the ball. I think this one's pretty cut and dry. We're talking defensive tackles, interior defensive line. Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, TJ Slayton, Colby Wood, and Carl Brooks.
Yep.
The only guy who I've seen a little bit from is Jonathan Ford. But I think they only keep 5 there. Especially since, in a base defense at least, there are only 2 of them on the field instead of 3, as has been the case in years past. So I think there isn't much to talk about there. If it wasn't just those 5 on the 53, I would be surprised.
I would agree. I was just reading a text from the talk and text line.
Is it anything we can read on air?
Oh, just let's see. Ken in the Falls. No, JB in the 920. He's trashing the Malik Willis trade. Says he's going to be a washout in the league in 2 years. This is a trash move. I don't know if it's a trash move. It was a 7th round draft choice. That's what they spent for Michael Pratt. They spent a 5th round draft choice on Sean Clifford. So, not all draft picks work out. And if you're trading a 7th round draft choice for a backup quarterback, it's by definition a flyer. I know they don't want to just give away draft picks. I get all of that. But, if Malik Willis doesn't catch on with the Packers, they only spent a 7th round draft choice on him, and they feel like that he's an upgrade. But I know you're talking defense right now. That just kind of caught my eye over on the talk text line.
Talk anything.
No. So I don't know if it's a trash move. I just think it's a roll of the dice as much as anything.
I mean, it's a low risk,
medium
reward move.
Yeah.
They gave up a 7th round pick. It's not like they gave up a 3rd round pick to get the guy.
Yeah, it's a 7th round pick for crying out loud. Do they have 4 of them this year?
Now, there probably is some concern that their backup quarterback position is not solidified. And
that's the bigger
the guy who's probably their backup for the majority of this year was worth only a 7th round pick. That's more of a concern than the move itself.
Yeah, but if Michael Pratt was your 7th or was your backup this year, he was only a 7th round pick.
Right. I think the biggest concern is that Sean Clifford did not establish himself as
correct.
Backup.
Agreed.
And he was a 5th round pick, which some people thought was a reach last year.
Yeah, maybe it was.
They were right. Edge, defensive end, whatever you want to call it. It's not outside linebacker anymore, technically, in Jeff Hafley's 4-3. This one seems pretty cut and dry, too. Aaron Mosby stated a case late, but as we've said, these guys aren't going to be asked to play defense during the season, barring multiple injuries. It's going to be Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith, Lucas Van Ness, Kingsley Enagbari, maybe Brenton Cox. I would assume Brenton Cox. You probably need a rotation of 5. Brenton Cox made it last year. It was those 5 last year. I would anticipate it to be the same Aaron Mosby showed some nice things, and maybe that helped his chances of getting a practice squad spot. I assumed he had that anyway, or maybe another team claims him. Nobody's going to claim Aaron Mosby, with all due respect. But like interior defensive line, I would be surprised if any of these guys get claimed, or it isn't just the same 5 as it was last year. So pretty cut and dry there,
Yeah,
too.
pretty cut and
And
dry.
the
I
offensive
think
side
so,
of the
yeah.
ball is way more interesting with offensive line,
Sure.
swing tackles, 6th wide receiver, running back, backup quarterback. Then the defensive front is like, all right, just go get the quarterback. We know
Right.
who's making the team.
Yeah. We have a pretty good idea.
Pretty good idea. Linebacker is interesting, though, but not really. Because you're going to take Cooper and Hopper. I think Hopper's shown some nice things with the way he attacks the football this preseason. Edgerrin Cooper hasn't shown anything just because he's been hurt, but you got to take him since he's a second-round pick.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, McDuffie makes the team. Quay makes the team. Eric Wilson makes the team. But as we said last week, Christian Welch is kind of in that same boat as Eric Wilson, where he's mainly a special teamer. But it's clear the team thinks Eric Wilson is ahead of Christian Welch in the defensive department because he was ahead of Edgerrin Cooper even before Cooper got hurt. So in base defense right now, Eric Wilson starts. So I think they only keep 5 there. Again, like we said, Mosby and Welch are kind of in a similar boat as, sure, they did nice things on defense, but are they going to be needed for defense? Maybe Christian Welch does make the team as just a special teamer, and they take one less corner or one less offensive lineman. But I still don't think Christian Welch makes the team just because they already have that linebacker who isn't going to play when there's only 2 linebackers on the field and is there mainly for special teams, and that's Eric Wilson. So I don't know if they need another one like that in Christian Welch.
It's too bad. He had a really good camp, or at least really good showing
Yes,
in the
did.
preseason. So, I mean, if nothing else, he put some stuff on tape. If there's somebody else there, he might get claimed. Who knows? I mean, I know that he's not a rookie by any stretch, but I mean, he showed he can make plays. Sometimes that's enough, and he did it, during game action where more people can, view what he saw or what he did. So we'll see.
After our next break, we're going to get to a couple more interesting ones. Corner, I think there are a couple interesting names there at the bottom of the depth chart with another rookie 7th-round pick. We already talked about one in Pratt. We're going to talk about another. Safety seems pretty cut and dry, but then the big one, kicker. Do the Packers do what they did with the quarterback position and go get their guy elsewhere? Or do they cross their fingers and pray to whoever they believe in that Anders Carlson figures it out? We'll talk about that and more after the break, right here on the Matt Schneidman Show on The Game. Show Monday, August 26th, presented by Potawatomi Sportsbook, a new era in sports betting. And if I was betting on who would make the Packers roster at cornerback, and don't worry, I'm not just jumping to cornerback. First two segments, we covered every position on offense and so far defense besides the secondary. And at cornerback, it's obviously Jair, it's Eric Stokes, it's Keyshawn Nixon, it's Carrington Valentine. And then I'm pretty sure it's Corey Ballantyne. And I'm pretty sure it's Kalen King. So that seems pretty cut and dry. I think they see Kalen King as maybe a hidden gem. He's made some plays during camp, did again on Saturday with a forced fumble against the Ravens. And with Ballantyne, he's a guy off the bench who did some really nice things last year, especially in that Minnesota game in Week 17 when Jair was suspended. Can provide depth outside or at the nickel. So I think they go 6 deep and keep Ballantyne and King. And maybe Eric Stokes, who's in a contract year, doesn't come back next year, barring some wildly resurgent year. And I don't know, who's the starting cornerback opposite Jair in 2025? Carrington Valentine, Kalen King, we'll see. I think they got some nice depth there. And if Carrington Valentine, who was a starter for a big chunk of last year due to Jair's injury, then Rasul Douglas's trade, if he's your first corner off the bench, that's pretty solid.
Yeah. I don't know. I would be interested to see what their plans are for Eric Stokes. Like you said, I think that he's due for, I think he's due for a resurgent year, but we'll see. I don't know. He's got to stay on the field. He's got to be healthy. That's the big thing for him.
He seems kind of, and maybe I'm off base in saying this, but he seems kind of like a boomer bust kind of guy.
Yeah, maybe.
It's either he's making interceptions, I think he has 4 this camp, or he's giving up big plays. There doesn't seem to be much of an in-between with Eric Stokes. Maybe he's more of a steady guy. I mean, he played really well as a rookie in 2021 and then just hasn't been on the field consistently since.
Right. Yeah.
And wasn't good in the first half of 2022. So we'll see what the Packers get out of Eric Stokes this year. I think he's an X factor for the team this year.
Yeah, I could see that. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Safety position, again, seems pretty cut and dry. McKinney, Bullard, Williams, whoever starts, but they both make the team. Anthony Johnson Jr. And then I think they only take 5 with Ketan Oladapo, who he'll have some time to develop, hasn't played much because of the broken toe that kept him out a chunk of training camp that he suffered at the combine. Zane Anderson, I think Andy Herman had Zane Anderson in his 53. Could be a depth piece and help out on special teams. He was on the 53 last year, so maybe he is this year. But remember, every time you add a guy, you got to take one away somewhere else. So I think Zane Anderson could be on the bubble.
Oh, I think he's on the bubble.
Oladapo hasn't played well enough to make the team, but he's a 5th-round pick, so he's going to, and it's not that he hasn't played well, it's that he's just been hurt.
Right.
You think Zane Anderson's on the bubble?
I do. Yeah, that doesn't mean that he's not going to make the team. I think that there are discussions about him right now, and like you said, if you add one to the 53, it means you got to take somebody else off of the 53. So I wouldn't be shocked to see him on the list of cuts tomorrow, but I also wouldn't be shocked to see him make it. But I do think he's on the bubble. Absolutely.
Now, here's where it gets interesting. Not punter or long snapper, because they only have one of each, Daniel Whelan and Matt Orzik. The kicker position.
Yeah. That's the one.
Asked post-game about the kicker position, Matt LaFleur basically said what he said about the backup quarterback position, that there's been some good, there's been some bad. They ended on a bad note with the missed 32-yarder, though I'm not sure if that was Carlson's fault or the operation. What do you think they do at kicker? Not only tomorrow, but then the day after as well.
I think that there might be different decisions that are made on Tuesday and Wednesday. And, I don't know that I would ever, like they traded for Malik Willis today. They traded a 7th-round draft choice, for example. I don't know that you do that with a kicker just because nobody keeps 2 kickers. I mean, sometimes even if you do keep 2 kickers, one of them's on your practice squad and you could just sign somebody off of somebody else's practice squad. So there are guys that are out there. I don't think they're satisfied with either one. I don't think they should be satisfied with either one. I know that they wanted Anders Carlson to win this job. I don't know that he did. I know that they're going through the tape and figuring out exactly what happened on that missed 32-yard field goal. There are three elements to it. There's the snap, the hold, and the kick, and maybe the hold wasn't as good as it could have been. And the blocking. So there's four elements. No, that's a good point. Absolutely. There are going to be guys that are going to be available that they've had their eye on. Whether or not they think that that player is going to be better than Anders Carlson, that I don't know. Greg Joseph made a great 55-yarder that could have been good from 60 plus. Give him all the credit in the world for that. I would be a little bit surprised if he made the team just based on how inconsistent he was the last couple of weeks.
Me too.
Of camp. So I think it's between Anders Carlson and somebody who may still officially be on a roster right now. So I wouldn't be shocked if they kept Carlson, cut Joseph, but then on Wednesday, or maybe even later on Tuesday, because cuts are due at 3:00, seeing who they're going to try to pass through. And if there's somebody else that they've had their eye on, I wouldn't be surprised if Anders Carlson is shown the door on Wednesday and somebody else is brought in on Wednesday.
Right. They're not going to trade for a kicker, I don't think, because
they shouldn't.
Any kicker that's not the starter, first of all, nobody's trading their starting kicker.
Right. Yeah.
And like you said, Doug, if a kicker isn't the starter, they're going to get cut because nobody's keeping two, like you said. So they don't have to give up a draft pick for a kicker. But I wonder if they're going to claim someone, put in a claim for someone, or just get the best of the bunch of who's left, or stick with Anders Carlson. I would not be surprised if Carlson's the kicker. I think he'll be the kicker at 3 p.m. tomorrow.
Right. I don't think.
But after that, I'm not so sure.
I'm skeptical because there's only 32 of these jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's going to be let go that maybe you think could come in and do a better job than Anders Carlson. That's what I think is going to happen. I think Anders Carlson is going to be the kicker at 3:00 tomorrow. I don't think he's necessarily going to be the kicker at 3:00 on Thursday. And I think they may put a claim in to see if they can get somebody that they at least have seen and kind of think that could come in and do a good job.
Bottom line is Anders Carlson wasn't good enough in camp. Greg Joseph wasn't good enough in camp. Both are hovering around 80%. It's not good enough in practice.
No, it's not. And we saw what Carlson did last year. Everything was a high wire act with him. And, with all the missed kicks at the end of the season, all the missed extra points, he wasn't good enough. Not only wasn't good enough in camp this year, he wasn't good enough last year. Just wasn't good enough. In the NFL, if you're a place kicker, I know kicking off is part of it, but if you can't put the ball through the upright consistently, you're not going to last in the league. No matter how strong your leg is, no matter who your special teams coach is, if you can't do that consistently, you're not going to stick around. And that's where Anders Carlson finds himself right now. There was a reason that he didn't talk I don't blame him. He didn't talk in the locker room after the game on Saturday. All anybody would ask about is, how do you feel about going into Tuesday? Do you feel like you're going to get cut after missing a 32-yarder? What happened on the 32-yard? I don't blame him for skipping out.
Did he skip out, or did he say, I'll be back after treatment?
I
already said I'll be back after treatment. And in fairness, he has faced reporters all the time.
Absolutely.
After rough days.
Like I said, I'm not blaming him at all. I wouldn't want to.
I don't know that he just skipped out on availability.
Okay.
I wasn't in there. I just heard that he said, I'll be back after treatment, and maybe he didn't know when locker room closed. I just think we got to give a guy who has always faced the media after rough days the benefit of the doubt.
Fair enough.
He talked after they lost in the playoffs to the 49ers.
Yeah, fair enough. Like I said, I'm not torching the guy. I understand. I get it.
I think what they ultimately do is keep Carlson on the initial 53, and that's why we call it the initial 53. And then TBD from there, based on who becomes available. They've definitely got their eyes on kickers. If they had their eyes elsewhere for quarterbacks, they had their eyes elsewhere for kickers. It's just a matter of, does a guy who they liked become available?
Yeah.
But I think at some point, I understand wanting to hold on to draft picks. We've said it before. Amari Rodgers, Jay Sternberger stayed for longer than they probably should have because they were draft picks. They get the benefit of the doubt. It's just what it is. Anders Carlson although he was a 6th round pick, I bet there's a little bit of Goody and Rich Bisaccia who say, you know what, this is our project. I kind of want to stick with it.
It's the wrong
but you got to
project to
cut
have.
ties when the risk isn't worth the reward.
That's the wrong project to have. That's when you can stash like a 3rd string tight end and make him a project, or a running back. Jordan Love was a project. He sat for 3 years behind Aaron Rodgers.
Can't make a kicker a project because they have to play.
You can't make a kicker a project. The guy's got to be able to kick from day one. Sorry, that's the job. There's only one job in the NFL at kicker. It's put the ball through the uprights consistently, and Anders Carlson hasn't done that, period.
No, he hasn't. I did see someone post today, I think, Packers all-time leaders in field goal percentage. I think he's number 1.
Anders Carlson?
Yeah. I saw someone say something, field goal percentage.
What is he on extra points?
Well, field goal percentage, I think he's at like 81.8. And then on extra points, he missed more than anyone in the NFL, so that's obviously not good. Anders Carlson, 81.8. Ryan Longwell, 81.6. Mason Crosby, 81.4. So technically, he's the best kicker in Packers history. What do you want to cut him for, people?
Uh-huh.
But there's obviously stuff that needs to be improved. Packers stuck with Mason Crosby through ups and downs. Do they stick with Anders Carlson through this down and then just give him a shorter leash if it doesn't get better? That's possible too.
I don't know with Mason Crosby, though. He had a body of work that he could lean back on.
I know. And it's not the same regime as the majority of the Mason Crosby regime, but something worth considering. It'll be something to keep an eye on tomorrow. Roster Cutdown Day. We'll be back at 6. For Doug, I'm Matt. Appreciate everyone for listening.